All right, what's up, you guys? This is Devin with Century Effects Studios, back with another video. And today we're going to go over Doug Mills' picture of Donald Trump with the bullet whizzing through the air and him catching it, being recorded over the sensor as it's close to the president or the former president's head. Now, this is not a political video, so if you're trying to do right, left, Democrat, Republican, that's not what this is. Now, this is a public image or a screen capture, so it's not the highest res, and I don't have the specs on the screen, but I'm going to tell you the specs right now. The specs is a Sony A1. The Sony A1 was at a shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second. The aperture was at 1.6, and the focal length was 24 millimeters, which tells us that he had a 24 millimeter prime. So this is a 24 millimeter 1.4 G master lens, and he was probably shooting for a news organization. I'm not sure which one, but Mr. Mills did a good job in capturing this image. But this is a very, very unique image in and of itself, because you don't get to see images like this where such a fast moving subject is captured at a fast shutter speed. Now, the shutter speed in reference to the bullet is a very slow shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second, but you're maxing out at that camera's shutter speed. So that means you can't get it any faster than it is now, because most cameras max out at 1/8,000th of a second with the shutter speed. Now, for those of you who know how to light paint, and those of you who know how to use slow shutter speeds and do fast moving actions, this is the same concept, but just at a faster shutter speed. The action is moving so much faster than the camera is recording the actual image. The only difference is that the camera is able to move fast enough to record the actual projectile moving. And since the camera can't slow it completely down, the actual bullet itself is starting to write itself over the exposure or record itself over the exposure, almost like a video. And the shutter itself has two curtains, and so since that shutter, he's probably shooting with an electronic shutter, but I'm not sure, because if it would have been a mechanical shutter, it may have chopped off the bullet in a weird way, or maybe the shutter speed is so slow in reference to the speed of the bullet that even if he was shooting with the mechanical shutter, that it would have caught all of this motion and recorded it across the sensor as the bullet was going through. Now, Trump turned and raised his hand. As a photographer, journalist, photojournalist, when you're photographing moments, when you're photographing somebody who's standing still on a stage, the first thing you want to get is movement, a hand going up, a head turn. The last thing you want to do is have them just standing right in front of the microphone and not moving, and it looks like they're not moving. The fact that he brought up his hand means that, hey, I'm going to get that shot because he brought up his hand. There's movement, there's motion. Maybe he was trying to strike a point, or maybe he was trying to exclamate a point, and he was trying to really nail home a point, and so he brought up his hands. And Trump really does get animated when he speaks with his facial expressions. He gets very intense, as you can see. He has, the eyes wincing, even though the sun is probably in his face. He brought up his hand to say something, and that's how you know you need to start photographing, because you want motion and movement. You want to make it seem like that person is alive through a photograph. He's really making a point, even though you can't hear what he's saying through the photograph. You see what I'm saying? So you want those hand movements, those head motions, because for the majority of the time when he's talking on the podium, you get little motion. You don't get a lot of motion. Trump just happens to be a very, very energetic type of person. He's an energetic character, and the movements he makes are very exaggerated in reference to most of the people who talk on stage like this and talk at rallies like this in these situations with the podium. So you got this podium where it really confines you in restricted motion as a presenter and stuff like that. So you really have to be looking out for these moments. And shout out to Doug Mills, who was shooting with that Sony A1 at 1/8,000th of a second, aperture f 1.6 with that 24 millimeter prime f1.4 G Master lens, and he was probably shooting at ISO 100. As a matter of fact, I would bet money that he was shooting at ISO 100, because there's no use in shooting at 1/8,000th of a second if you can't get ISO 100, unless he was using a lens filter, which I'm kind of doubting he was. So you're in this situation where the president now moves, and that movement probably is what saved his life. His movement off to the left and raising his hand is probably what saved his life. And that movement is what caused the photographer to go and take this picture. Had Trump been extremely still and just moved his eyes at that moment, he probably would have been tagged by the bullet in the head, and the actual photographer probably wouldn't have thought to take the photo because they weren't moving that much. It's not like you sit there the entire 1 hour the rally might be, I guess, I don't know, and just go off on the shutter. You usually take moments that are very, very decisive, because think about it. These news organizations that are sending out images, and they're constantly sending out images, especially Sony, because they get direct feed straight from the cameras in real time. When you're shooting like that, you don't want to be shooting thousands and thousands and thousands of images. You want to be shooting decisive moments, and that's what makes photojournalists. And I agree with Jared Polin when he says cell phones will never outdo this. Cell phones won't take over the camera industry or cameras too much. They'll take the business away, but they won't do this. And that's a very, very important point. So you got to give not only the photographer credit, all credit going to the photographer, but you also want to give credit to the camera maker that actually gives you the ability to take these images. And that's why we get on YouTube and we always talk about the latest, greatest spec, the latest, greatest things that we can master on cameras as photojournalists, as event photographers, and people who are capturing this fast action, because we revel in it. We love it. We live for it. Because these photographers are not getting up and running away. I think Jared Polin also said that that Trump had interns because his photographers quit, and that these interns with cameras did not know to stay and weather out the storm of this intense moment. And as a photographer, what you're probably doing is getting the shot, but also listening to the Secret Service, because they're yelling out commands to the president. And if the president's safe, that means you're safe. If the president's in the situation, that means you need to be in the situation. That's kind of like the photographers took the confidence level of the Secret Service to a large degree. Even though they're not putting themselves in the way of the bullet, they're not moving and ducking and getting out of the way, because they can easily get caught by a stray bullet, especially with the person who was shooting. He was in a stressful situation. He was being shot at as well, and then he ended up getting shot and killed. And so you got to understand that this is not a political thing, and this is not about one side versus the other side. This is about the talent of this great photographer, Doug Mills. It doesn't matter that he was shooting with the Sony so much, is that the fact that he knew his instrument, which is his camera, shooting at 1/8,000th of a second, 1/8,000th of a second, excuse me, and then being able to actually photograph that. And people who with prime lenses probably wouldn't think to actually shoot this. You see what I'm saying? He got in the right spot, right time, right equipment, and the best camera and lens setup you have is the one you have with you, and he did it up. You see what I'm saying? So this wasn't taken at the highest resolution. On top of that, this is not the highest resolution of that version of the low resolution still. I wouldn't say it's the lowest resolution, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle. I'm pretty sure, news and press probably don't want you to be shooting RAW. They probably want you to be shooting JPEG at lower resolution so they can get this and truck this stuff out as soon as possible. So these are things to think about, guys, when you are photographing your images and what it takes to get these images done. Now, as you can see, like I said, the photo is the bullet is whizzing here. Obviously, this was doctored to show the moment where the bullet was. But as you can see here, it's painted across the sensor like a slow shutter speed with high moving motion. Except instead of us being at like bulb mode or 2 or 3 or 10 seconds or 20 seconds, they're at 1/8,000th of a second, and the speed of the bullet is so fast that it's carrying over that same effect. Now, this is a big issue for publicity when it comes to Canon, because Canon has a big announcement coming up Wednesday. It will be the announcement for the R5 Mark II and the development announcement, or the I think it is the development announcement for the Canon R1. The Canon R1 is the competitor to this Sony A1. Even though the R3 was out recently and most people think it's that competitor, no, it was supposed to be a flagship. Canon has not had a flagship for their mirrorless camera, and they're supposed to make a big announcement on this on Wednesday. But since most of the cameras that were photographing the former President Trump here is going to be Sony cameras, a lot of people are going to be looking at Sony and giving Sony a big boost, while Canon wants this big boost because they haven't brought out a camera or a big camera in years, and the R5 Mark I was a big deal. Obviously the R5 Mark II is going to be a super big deal, but having this big deal happen as well and Sony cameras being all over it, that might be a big hindrance to Canon. We might need to go and check it out. I'm probably going to be doing a review on the Canon announcement as it comes out. I'm going to be actually at a photo shoot when that happens at 6 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time. So I will be putting out a review on it later after I'm able to get my hands on the footage. So what do you guys think? Do you think that this was a great shot? Do you think I mean, this probably wasn't the full composition, it wasn't the full resolution, but take it for what it is, capturing the moment, because that's really what the cameras get sold for, and the higher end cameras really get sold for capturing the moment. I'm Devin with Century FX Studios, guys. This was not a political video. This was just breaking it down photographic wise and showing how publicly Sony's going to look so much better than Canon might on their release date on Wednesday. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next video.